This podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our AI in Action series, where leading minds in AI from across the world share their story, success, and advice. AI in Action cuts through the hype and explores the true impact of artificial intelligence in our world today.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is Semih Korkmaz. Semih is the co-founder of Stoovo. Semih, welcome to the show.
Thank you, and thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. Semih, let's start with yourself, please. Can you give us a bit of background of your journey in technology, from where you got started and what's led you to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. First, I started to get into computer vision in the last years of my college education, and I started working with the remote sense images and classification. People from that era would know that the life was more about feature engineering and then pattern recognition in the classification world. And from that years on in the decade that we had, it was more about deep learning in the machine learning area. So things have changed a little bit. And during that change, I also started to switch from these approaches to deep learning and reinforcement learning in manufacturing domain and also in telecommunications, where I work with the robotics and network communication. Mostly we had to deal with a lot of embedded systems, and I really like that I had the chance to work with a diverse set of problems in machine learning. So over the years, I got all these different ideas stack up on me, and then we met with my co-founders and started on this startup journey.
Thank you for the background. Really appreciate it. So you mentioned getting connected with the co-founders and launching Stoovo, which was in January of 2018. First of all, tell us about Stoovo, who you are as a business, what the mission of the company is, and then talk us through some of the early days of where you guys came up with the idea and decided to do it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Like many startups, it was just an idea with my co-founders, and I was located in Europe, and we met online, and we were talking about some ideas of artificial intelligence and how the way of people work is changing in the recent years and the challenges that come up with it. And we were always thinking, okay, could we do something about it? And that's how we decided to move on the idea of optimization for gig workers and independent workers. And we started working on this. We made a few iterations, and that's where we are right now. And we added an AI part of it because the optimization was requiring to deal with complex decision making under large amounts of data for the people. And we specifically try to right now guide the users who are using digital platforms such as Uber, Lyft, but not necessarily limited to those, on how to schedule their work and how to reach more income stability as they work. Because most of the systems that they are dealing with is very data-driven, and it is very dynamic, which is not the way people used to work before, right? So they had to now switch to this whole new world of work, which became even more interesting with the COVID timeline. And we believe that people will also benefit from algorithms also working on their side to understand their situation. So that's what we started to build already.
Love it. So help us visualize what this is like day to day. Can you give us an example of a typical customer who you guys are helping out, what they come to you with, what's the origin of the problem that they're trying to solve, and walk us through how you guys help the customers use the Stoovo platform to achieve a set goal?
So if you look at the market recently in gig workplace market from 2020 to 2022, especially with COVID, as I was saying, that there are very significant platforms that people can work at in the ride sharing and the delivery, but there are more coming into this market. And when a user joins that first, especially new users who are joining to this new workforce, first, they do not necessarily know how to set their schedule best for their interest. They have their own personal priorities, of course, such as limited time with the work as they need to pick up their children from the school or vice versa. And then they need to understand, okay, what platform they need to work at what time and what place. So experienced users have some good ideas on what they earn in different times of the day, and they can really have an estimation. But especially new users working in one platform and they don't even know that there is another platform very active in their region, and it's also giving a lot of good payouts in specific hours. And when they come to Stoovo, they get the chance to see about these events and this information, and they can prioritize their work hours for different platforms, sign up to the new ones, and get a better payout and reduce their wait time for the next gig.
Semih, in your introduction, you talked about the implementation of AI when you guys identified the need for it. Can you walk us through what that was like? At what point did you guys as a team say, okay, we need to use more artificial intelligence? And in its current version, when you look at the team now, where are you using AI and what impact is it having to the business?
Although that these gig earnings, I would say as structural data, as most of the platforms report the earnings of the user and work times of the user. But first, there is big difference on how they do the reporting, that some gig platforms give information, very specific information about the time that you started working and you stopped working, and they define it as okay, this is the time you pick up a passenger and this is the time you drop off a passenger. They give, okay, this is how many miles that you actually driven and what was the route, even this information. While others are giving this, instead of in one atomic view, they give this data in more compact view, where you have the number of tasks that you did for a whole day is in one package of data. So, and when you work with more than 3-4 gig platforms, then you are actually facing a big data problem yourself, even as a user. The data are reported in different formats, and then you are dealing with 3-4 channels at least of data channels that is providing information to you, and they do use different techniques to do this reporting to you, whether it is immediate or later, and you get to learn about tips later. In some platforms, you also don't even know where you are supposed to go before accepting a job. In some other platforms, you do. All these actually give you a cognitive challenge to understand and put a strategy for your work. As you're an independent worker, you need to be able to on top of that strategy. And we realize, okay, this is getting challenging over the time for the users, because even looking at the data, you could see, okay, if you do some analysis on your own data, if you can, you start to realize the best strategies for yourself. But then with all these challenges that I just had, and on top of that, that people in the machine learning domain know that there is a data shift going on, especially with the COVID, post-COVID, and gas prices rising, that the inputs that you are getting also shifting a lot. So with all these challenges, we realize, okay, let's try to collect this data and then try to look at the outputs and see if we can come up with predictions and strategies for the user to follow for these multiple platforms, not only for predictions, but also getting a better picture of what they have done so far, so they could make more informed decisions.
You are listening to the Alldus podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com.
You and I spend a lot of time offline talking about the growth planned for Stoovo. Very exciting stuff. I want to spend a bit of time now talking about your plans to grow the business over the next year to 2 years, and with that, the unique work that you and your team will be doing, and also speaking to an audience of data professionals. What positions are there going to be available at Stoovo in the year ahead?
So the problems that I mentioned are actually just the beginning of this whole journey, because there are so many other things that can be done to make the gig workers' life better with the technology. Digitalization is still going on very fast in this domain, and there are other aspects of their financial health and work. For example, current banking system is a little bit behind when it comes to serving this digital economy, because if you look into it, the whole actions are generally done after yearly reportings of the income, and the work activities are done, which is very unnatural. People who are working like in 20 minutes, 30 minutes quick shifts, and everything is happening too fast. So even in these domains, that there will be lots of other prediction problems that we will try to address, and I'm sure that lots of other people in different sectors will try to address, as gig workers are now increasing over the numbers of 60 million in the United States. And we will be looking into a lot of opportunities to explore these. And while doing so, of course, we are looking to hire more data scientists who is interested in working with the time series and spatial temporal optimization topics, definitely. And with the trends that is going on in the mobile application development, we believe that there will be more geographical information systems understanding work needed to be done both in the industry itself and in the academia. So I think this will be a very interesting skill set to develop over the next years.
Semih, obviously launching the company in the beginning of 2018, it's been quite an interesting 4 years with many ups and downs. The impact of COVID for all startups has been felt. When you look back now at the journey, what are some of the things that stand out to you as memorable? Any learns, any advice that you'd offer for other entrepreneurs who are looking to start out in their startup from what you've experienced?
So first thing I would say is scoping the problem, data science problem, is quite important at the early days. And the reason for that is, especially if you're coming from academia or you had worked with the technology and research for too long, that you start to take some terminology and how the technology works a little bit granted for yourself. And you need to understand that how you will be able to communicate this with the user. So if you are even looking into a basic prediction problem, such as how you detect cats on the images, and if you look into the labeling of that, you realize, okay, people are, even in such a simple case, you would think they have differences in how they create bounding boxes, or do they consider a whole cat as a cat in the image or not. So you realize that people have a lot of differences in interpreting the results, or what is good and what is not in their understanding. So first thing to consider looking back is, are we communicating what we predict enough for users to easily understand? That's what we are trying to tell. That would be one thing to cover. For any machine learning projects, I would go with some A and B tests that, let's forget about the predictions and everything, and let's say this is how it represents our results. Is that clear for everyone, stakeholders, to understand, okay, this is what it is, and this is how you can take action on this description of the prediction or whatever that you are doing with your machine learning operation. So the second thing I would say is being very careful with the data shifts. Again, that especially since we are working with the gig economy data, we were one of the early observers of how the data shift can happen really fast. In many different domains that this can change a little bit, but once we had the data from users, and we've seen a very dominant right share of users, and where the right share is very prominent when it comes to make your decisions and optimize your income. And then with the COVID, a lot of ride share options even disappeared. So you would be even looking what type of jobs that I might be getting, like 2 or 3 people all together on the shared ride or not. And these options have disappeared. And then people, instead of doing lots of traveling, they started to stay at home and make a lot of orders, so not to go out. And then all of a sudden that delivery became the prominent gig work for most of the people. And then with the COVID situation is getting resolved, that you realize, okay, this shift is getting a little bit more balanced, but not fully. So data shifts can happen really fast, and you need to really be on top of it to be able to respond that in time. Especially, I think, in this now fast-changing digital economy, that's something that we learn on the way. and that is very hard to cover sometimes, where you have not enough data to immediately respond to the shift. So it is good to build a strategy again to how you can do data augmentation and your validation set straight to deal with sudden changes like this.
Semi-final question from me, bringing it back around to Stoovo and what's next. You and I speak a lot about the exciting growth ahead. When you look at the rest of 2022 and beyond, specifically thinking about Stoovo, what are you most excited about for the future of the business?
I like that we are a mission-driven company, that we are trying to improve lives of lots of people. And what we are hoping to have in this very next year, improve our offerings when it comes to give more insights, because there are actually some insights that we can see from the data and in machine learning side, such as not only where to work, but also about the future of each individual worker. But a lot of things sometimes stay in hypothesis stage because we still want to be more sure, get more sure about how those insights could be interpreted and can actually be applied on enough number of users. So I am hoping that we will be given more interesting insights rather than just predicting where to work. And while doing so, we would like to expand into different parts of United States and even outside of the United States by the end of the year. So we are hoping that we're going to have even larger impact by the number of users and also the offerings that we will be able to provide in terms of being more foresighted gig worker in the market.
Semih, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate you talking to us, sharing your background, talking about the origin story behind Stoovo and giving all the details about its mission and how you're working with AI on a daily basis to help your customers. We wish you, the team, and everyone at Stoovo the best of luck in the years ahead.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.